Okay, so by now it's clear this case did not remain contained. All right, when a situation like this escalates beyond its original scope, it almost always means that there's some type of external pressure that's entered the environment. I'm wondering if this is like Cash Patel, the FBI presence, the infighting. Maybe they're like, no, this is a state case, clear the area, take my section down. Like it feels like there's some type of fight between, the chief and who I don't know what the rankings are, but you get what I'm saying. Authorities in different agencies are kind of like going back and forth. So today's episode is not about like naming the subjects. Again, like I said, or suspects. It's not about naming the suspects right now. It's too much of a sensitive situation for me to kind of like accuse people based off of feeling. Now, it's about identifying where the influence, maybe the access, because we've seen some things pop up with who may or may not have access to the house and all of that, or maybe even like some leverage may have come from a situation and why the escalation occurred and when it did happen. Okay. So we're still trying to nail down this timeline. I think, along with the timeline that would track the disappearance of Nancy, I think we're also going to be able to track some things that are happening in real time as far as the investigation. So, escalation is not about volume, it's about complexity, right? So, we've seen repeated public messaging now for videos from the family. We've had controlled language, like we mentioned before, procedural irregularities, like we just talked about. And now we have coordinated timing around the press activity. Okay. So we know when we see a lot of movement, some things are going down, people are getting information. There's going to be reports. Press conference should be to follow soon. Now, those patterns suggest that this situation has exceeded what any one household could manage alone. All right. We have a lot of different people who are focusing on the story, trying to provide as much information as possible, which is super important for people like me who are intuitive, who are trying to not necessarily be tainted by official reports and dissect things with a, fine tooth comb using a high level of discernment. Now, external involvement does not automatically mean there is a criminal conspiracy. It just means that there are intermediaries, there are advisors, there are different pressure points, or maybe even better, third parties whose presence may change a lot of this decision making. Okay, so um, let's figure out what is going on because it already showed up in the reading that I just did that there's some new statements being made. There could be some updates as far as the procedure is concerned. We have also something about the investigation kind of being in phase 5 right now, where the status may change. Okay, we have blood-stained clothing that just flew out. We have high society elite. I think this is just in reference to Savannah being a public figure. Now we also have phase 3, the timeline integrity. That is getting okay, and this is clarifying the numbers and timestamps card. So they could be finding out how, they could be confirming the integrity of a timeline based off of a statement that someone made or an alibi that may not match with what they think is going on. An alibi may not match with even what's going on with different sightings or things that were picked up on the camera, if anything at all, during a power outage. Okay, during a power outage. Now, there's not any reports about a power outage, but what have I been saying? I think she was taken in the middle of the night. Like around 1 a.m. or whatever. I think they got her into I'm just going to say it. I think they put her in the back of a UPS truck or an Amazon truck or something like that. And that would give them a clean break if you think about it, because they had to exit the premises. And while that is a gated community, it is a private location. I do feel like, there are people, different Karens walking around. They know what's going on in their neighborhood. They would say something if they were questioned in time enough to be able to recall that information. You know how many things happen during the course of a day and how your mind could piece together information that may or may not happen. Um, your ability to recall memory may have, it can change the course of investigation. I remember in one of these readings there was something about like memory gaps, like a guest memory gaps, like somebody could have said something that was intentionally to create some type of gap in the timeline or to throw some people off, or there could just be not, an ability to recall information properly at the right time. There's been discussions about the police not necessarily going door to door. They were going door to door, I think, the day that the cameras were found. And then they were telling people of the media to stay off of the property of certain people, right, who were close to the house. However, there was not a lot of questioning. There was a neighbor, Sue Ellen, I think her name is. She reported them coming by to ask her about like camera footage, like if she had any surveillance footage that they could look at, but she only had cameras on the inside of her home that look out. So that was not helpful. I did find that to be a strange oddity. I mean, maybe people do that, but why go through the hassle? I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of like, why go through the hassle of having cameras inside when you can also have cameras outside? Like, why are we not being thorough with our security? But whatever. Okay, so I do want to reflect on the overall that popped out for this card, or for this like little, I don't know what you want to call it, this little snapshot board. There is some significance here about the poisoning. Okay, we have a witness recent statement. Again, this has been popping up. Something about witness entered secret protection. I think that's in reference to the family going into, hiding, as they say. I don't know if it's necessarily hiding. Maybe they're just going to Nancy's house. I mean, Savannah's house. Doesn't she have a house in the Catalina Hills? If she was trying to, if they were going to an Airbnb for the sake of some unknown figure not knowing where they are, like for security purposes, how would the reports of them leaving and going to that location be confirmed? I don't know if that's just verifiable information. Okay, so constructed betrayal. We have family sues for justice. Again, I said in the beginning that this case could make Savannah popular in a different way. And as it relates to politics, like her involvement in politics is going to be more pronounced. I think there could be some reforms that are initiated due to this whole situation. The rescue, recovery, resolution situation card is out here. So that definitely tells me something about the status of what we are approaching. With the heavy media presence, we're definitely going to get some info today, I think. Now, I did get numbers. Maybe 3 days ago, I got some numbers. There was going to be something that came to a conclusion on day 9th. What happened on day 9th? I think what we concluded was that something occurred at Annie's house beyond just the removal of those cameras. It's like, I think by day 9, we all kind of came to the conclusion that the point of interest is really at the house. Okay. And there was something that was cause for concern beyond the blood spatter at the front porch. Now, the card with death in custody, that's interesting because I feel like the custody thing, death in custody, I think that's more so about like Nancy being found, or not found, Nancy being held and dying, maybe due to stress, having a heart attack and passing away while she's captured during that time could be significant. Who knows? But let's ask a couple more questions. I don't have that many because, again, I have to do some of these really quickly. I know that there's a statement coming up, so I just want to do this in a timely fashion. Did the situation escalate after new information was introduced. We have sudden cardiac arrest. I just said something about her having like a sudden, like she died suddenly in the midst of something. It doesn't mean that that was the only way that she would have died. It could also been like she could have been tortured. There could have been a certain level of stress involved in it that made her reach that point, and they could have done things to her afterwards. Again, not trying to get very grotesque, but I just gotta say offer a different perspective. Okay, so did the situation escalate after new information was introduced? They may have gotten, and the card coming out for that was the sudden cardiac arrest. I think they also may have gotten like pinged information about just beyond the iCloud situation. I think it's like they could see the results of something from maybe her doctor's office or whatever, and they could tell something maybe was amiss at a specific time that links up with the time of something else. Roses or dead flowers could be significant. Again, I feel like this is more so about her death, maybe even finding her at a burial site. I don't know. Was there involvement from someone outside the immediate household who had access, familiarity, or prior interaction with Nancy? Okay, now I'm also wondering if one of her best friends has something to do with this, because one of her little church friends, or maybe one of them is significant in the emergency call, like alerting the police that she didn't come to church, she didn't come to my house for church or whatever, because she didn't do church online by herself all the time. She did church at other people's houses. It was a rotating kind of schedule, and she never went in to the church. Okay, so maybe she has, her little old lady friends who know what she does throughout the course of the day. Restricted property zones came out again. Fence or barrier, relocation records. Okay, what did I say? Something about like them pushing back the threshold for media and all of that. But was there involvement from someone outside the media household who had access, familiarity, or prior interaction? This also makes me feel like with the lack of restricting the zones early on, the involvement could be more so law enforcement. And it doesn't have to necessarily be nefarious. It could be just that there's, like there is different barriers, or things are being relocated, moved around. So that could have been like also a reason. Twisted outcome is falling out again. We have inside vehicle or trunk. Something could be found in the inside of a vehicle. Evidence could be found in the inside of the vehicle or a trunk. A gun could be involved. Or this is in reference to the smoking gun. Is there a distinction between those directly involved and those influencing the response? All right, symbolic jewelry is out here again. That came out before, but not that card exactly. It was like unusual jewelry. We have smart home devices witness. Okay. All right. Corrupt official is underneath the deck. Communication. So my question was, is there a distinction between those directly involved and those influencing the response? It feels like there might be a clear distinction, but it's coming from multiple angles, so it could be confusing. Any final messages about this? Also, another thing that I want to get to is the Dear Savannah letter. Because the ransom was sent to Savannah, I don't know if the ransom was also then sent to the media and addressed as Dear Savannah, to TMZ, to the other local news stations in Arizona. Was it addressed Dear Savannah? Because they said there was a Dear Savannah ransom, but was that just the one that went to the family? Because if it went down to the media and at different local stations that she doesn't even work or she has direct affiliation to, that could be a strange thing too. I did mention something about like there were reports about, I mean, not official reports, but people talking about like Facebook messages that were a little weird that she was getting from a certain person. Um, and in one of these readings, there was also something about her uh, not not necessarily her, but there was somebody involved in this situation that did not trust their instincts. Something was amiss, and they thought that they were being paranoid. Okay. Any final messages? Any final messages about the Dear Savannah ransom? Lace drinker food. Why does that keep coming out? 1:11 a.m. Status. Unnatural silence at the site. Poison. All right. One last card. One last card to close out, please. One last card to close out, please. All right. Corporate executive. Check the timeline. Okay. No vehicle, on foot, shadow figures, a dark hooded figure, the holidays, misunderstood genius, asphyxiation, military boats, emotional breakdown, divine protection, block the killers. Block the killers from what? Blocked the killers. Something could be blocked. That could also be a reason why there was an escalation. Resentment towards authority. Okay, yeah, that's the next card that just underneath. So something could have been blocked. Maybe it had something to do with like the blockchain or Bitcoin not having access to that amount of money or not being able to clear that large amount of money. Back to square one. So they're back to square one, or that's how they feel. They could feel like they have to go back to the drawing board. Extradition treaties, limitations, distraction case, all eyes. Okay, so this is a part of what we know. Threats not taken seriously. All right, I'm going to close it out there. Financial red flag and guest testimonies is out. Okay, so definitely something is going on. There could be some finances involved as just a way to kind of like add fluff to the story, but there could be like an underlying situation as to why this is escalating. Now, escalation often follows one of two different realizations. Either the situation is more serious than first believed, not taking it that seriously, like we've been saying, or it carries consequences beyond the immediate people involved. There could be something that goes beyond this family. Maybe somebody is thinking about taking other people's family members if they don't respond a certain way, and they're using media anchors as a way to send a message. Maybe this could be something larger where there are something, some international influences involved in this situation, and they could be threatening the livelihood or safety of other people in another region. Who knows? Um, at this stage, the case shows markers of risk management, not chaos. Again, they don't want to alert the public in such a way that it would become a dire situation. But I do find it interesting, again, that Savannah made a fourth video, and the sheriff's department has been saying that they were not aware of any communications that were happening with the or why am I saying the FBI? They were not aware of any communications that the family was having with the captures. Now, somebody did also say that jurisdiction may come into play as far as like if communication is done electronically or digitally online or whatever, that's when the FBI steps in on it. So maybe that's part of the reason why the family didn't say to the sheriff or to the sheriff's office that they were in communication. Maybe they were advised not to speak on it, but the information is out there now. So maybe that also could change the trajectory of certain things. Maybe they were told not to involve local police specifically due to resources and being able to map the location. Maybe they didn't want a certain level of authorities present. Okay, so That tells us the response is being shaped as much by what could happen as by what already has happened. All right. Now, I do kind of feel compelled to ask one last question. Is the current response, is it like driven more by preventing secondary fallout, or is it about resolving the initial event? Is the current response driven more by preventing secondary fallout? We have two cards. All right. Three. During a major event came out. Okay. Justice is coming in a strange way, and witness entered secret protection. At the top of the deck, we have cadaver dog deployment methods. Okay. So we may start seeing some cadaver dogs out there present searching, which is not unusual. But again, like I said, when you see different movement, that is when you know that there's some new developments. So episode 5 is going to address some of these trajectory leads, not again in specifics, but in operational postures. So the rescue versus recovery, as we've been seeing in those cards, the discovery versus disclosure. If you're following in real time, please stay with me as we continue this series. Make sure that you hit the like button, the subscribe button, all that good stuff. It helps the message get out. This is a timely case, so it may help authorities get to certain things. I don't know, but I'm just here to do my job, deliver the messages. Okay, so we're now past surface level analysis at this point. We're going to continue in the next one. I love you. Bye.